Most men spend years trying to become more attractive, more respected, and more successful, yet they keep making one mistake that quietly destroys all three. They believe attention creates value. They think the louder they are, the more people will notice them. The harder they try, the more they will matter. But if you've ever watched a room carefully, you've probably noticed something strange. The person chasing attention rarely owns the room. The person who owns the room is usually the one who doesn't seem desperate for it. And that single observation reveals a hidden truth about human psychology that most people never discover. The people who seem impossible to ignore aren't trying to be noticed at all. They're operating from something much deeper. But that's only the beginning. Think about the moments when you felt overlooked. Maybe you were in a conversation where nobody seemed interested in what you had to say. Maybe someone you cared about slowly stopped responding to your messages. Maybe you worked hard, stayed loyal, did everything right, and still watched someone else receive the recognition you wanted. Those experiences leave scars. Not physical scars, but psychological ones. They create a quiet fear that follows many men for years. The fear of becoming invisible. The fear that no matter how hard you try, you'll never truly matter. And once that fear takes hold, it starts influencing every decision you make without you even realizing it. What happens next changes everything. The strange thing about insecurity is that it often disguises itself as confidence. A man may talk constantly because he's afraid silence will expose him. He may show off his achievements because he's terrified people won't see his worth. He may chase validation because he secretly doubts himself. From the outside, it looks like confidence. Underneath, it's fear. Most people never realize this because insecurity isn't always quiet. Sometimes it's the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it's the endless need to prove something. And the more a person tries to force respect, the further respect seems to move away. Few people understand what comes after this. Look at the men who naturally command attention. Not celebrities. Not influencers. Real men you've met in everyday life. The ones people trust. The ones whose opinions carry weight. The ones others instinctively listen to. They often share one surprising characteristic. They aren't trying to convince anyone of who they are. Their energy feels different. They don't rush. They don't over-explain. They don't need constant approval. Somewhere along the way, they learned a lesson that most people miss. They realized that self-worth cannot be negotiated. It cannot be borrowed from strangers. It cannot be earned through endless performance. And that's where the real story starts. Human beings are constantly reading signals. Long before someone analyzes your words, they respond to your emotional state. If you're desperate for acceptance, people feel it. If you're comfortable with yourself, people feel that too. That's why some individuals walk into a room and instantly change the atmosphere without saying much at all. Their presence communicates something powerful. It says, "I know who I am." And whether people realize it consciously or not, that certainty is attractive. Not just romantically, but socially, professionally, and emotionally. The hidden truth is that confidence is less about what you say and more about what you no longer need to prove. Many men spend years chasing external victories while ignoring internal mastery. They build careers but lose peace. They earn money but struggle with self-respect. They become successful on paper while feeling empty in private. Why? Because achievement and identity are not the same thing. One can be taken away. The other cannot. A promotion can disappear. A business can fail. A relationship can end. But if your identity is rooted in who you are rather than what you possess, those setbacks don't destroy you. This is where everything shifts. Imagine two men facing rejection. One immediately questions his worth. He wonders what is wrong with him. He replays every mistake. He becomes trapped in self-doubt. The other feels the disappointment too, but he doesn't allow it to define him. He understands that rejection is an event, not an identity. The difference between these two men isn't talent, looks, or luck. It's psychological strength. One sees obstacles as proof of inadequacy. The other sees them as part of growth. That distinction changes the direction of an entire life. But the next insight is even more important. Most people believe emotional control means suppressing feelings. It doesn't. Real emotional control means experiencing emotions without becoming controlled by them. Anger comes. You don't become anger. Fear appears. You don't become fear. Doubt shows up. You don't surrender to doubt. The strongest people aren't emotionless. They are emotionally disciplined. They can sit with discomfort without needing immediate relief. They can face uncertainty without panicking. They can experience criticism without collapsing. And because of that, they become incredibly difficult to manipulate. Few people realize how powerful this truly is. Here's something almost nobody talks about. Many of the things people desperately want from others are things they haven't learned to give themselves. Respect, validation, appreciation, acceptance. When you don't provide those internally, you begin hunting for them externally. Every compliment becomes addictive. Every criticism becomes devastating. Every rejection feels catastrophic. But when self-respect becomes an internal standard instead of an external reward, your entire reality changes. Suddenly, you're no longer begging the world to confirm your value. You're carrying that value with you wherever you go. At this point, many men start asking a different question. If chasing validation doesn't work, what does? The answer may surprise you. Purpose. Not motivation. Not excitement. Purpose. Motivation comes and goes. Purpose remains. A man with purpose doesn't need constant encouragement because his direction isn't determined by temporary emotions. He knows where he's going. He knows why he's going there. And that clarity creates a kind of power that others immediately recognize. This explains why some people remain focused while everyone else gets distracted. Most men never discover what happens next. The moment you stop living for approval, something unexpected begins to happen. People start respecting you more. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're trying less. You stop shaping your personality around other people's expectations. You stop saying yes when you mean no. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. And in doing so, you become more authentic. Ironically, authenticity is often what attracts the very respect people spend years trying to force. But here's the surprising part. If you're enjoying this video and want more powerful insights on psychology, self-improvement, and mental strength, make sure to like this video. Subscribe to Think Nectar, and turn on notifications so you never miss a future lesson. Now let's go deeper. One of the greatest advantages a man can develop is comfort with solitude. Not loneliness. Solitude. There's a difference. Loneliness feels like something is missing. Solitude feels like nothing is missing at all. When you're comfortable being alone, you stop tolerating relationships that drain you. You stop chasing people who don't value you. You stop accepting disrespect just to avoid isolation. And that changes everything because people can sense when your happiness doesn't depend on their approval. History repeatedly shows the same pattern. Leaders, innovators, and influential individuals often possessed an unusual ability to stand apart from the crowd. They weren't controlled by popular opinion. They weren't constantly adjusting their beliefs to fit in. They trusted their judgment. That doesn't mean they were always right. It means they weren't terrified of being different. The fear of social rejection controls more lives than most people realize. Yet the people who make the biggest impact are often the ones willing to disappoint others in order to remain true to themselves. The real battle isn't against other people. It never was. The real battle happens internally. It's the fight between who you are today and who you're capable of becoming. It's the struggle between comfort and growth, between excuses and responsibility, between fear and courage. Every day, that battle quietly determines your future. And the outcome isn't decided by one dramatic moment. It's decided by small choices repeated consistently over time. The choices nobody sees. The choices that shape character. As men grow older, many begin to understand something they couldn't see when they were younger. Life is not a competition against everyone else. It's a process of becoming stronger, wiser, calmer, and more grounded than your former self. The comparison game never ends because there will always be someone richer, stronger, smarter, or more successful. But self-mastery follows different rules. The goal isn't to beat everyone. The goal is to conquer yourself. And once you understand that, many of the insecurities that once controlled you begin losing their power. The most respected men aren't necessarily the most talented. They're often the most disciplined. The men who keep their word when nobody is watching. The men who remain calm when others panic. The men who continue moving forward when life becomes difficult. Discipline creates confidence because every promise you keep to yourself becomes evidence that you can be trusted. And over time, that trust becomes unshakable. This is where everything changes. At the end of the day, people may forget your achievements. They may forget your status. They may forget your possessions. But they never forget how your presence made them feel. And the strongest presence isn't built through performance. It's built through character, through self-respect, through emotional control, through purpose, through becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to chase significance because significance naturally follows who they are. The moment you stop asking the world for permission to matter is the moment your transformation truly begins. Because the most powerful man in the room is rarely the one demanding attention, it's the one who no longer needs it.